essentially.
Yeah.
You've just laid that out. So why did they do it? Do you think there was some political motivation on the part of people at the FBI to, or the Justice Department, or mostly the FBI at the time, to go after the Trump campaign in this way?
That's why we have Durham. I mean, Durham is able to look at all the evidence. He's able to not only look at the evidence within the FBI, he's able to require people to testify.
This is the U.S. Attorney in Connecticut.
U.S. Attorney, and he's able to talk to other agencies. He's able to talk to private parties. There was a lot of swirl of activity going on at this time. It wasn't all in the FBI. So I think he will have a broader appreciation of all the facts, and a determination can be made. I don't know what the motivations were, and I'm not saying they were improper motivations, but I think it's premature to rule definitively there wasn't. Now, in that regard, people have to understand the role of the IG. We are an agency that makes discretionary decisions every day, thousands of them, and the internal watchdog, his general approach, and it's the right approach, and I respect it, is to say, look, if the people involved give me reasonable explanations for what they do, that is, their explanation's not unreasonable on their face, and I can't find any documentary or testimonial evidence that contradicts it, I will accept it. And that's what happened here. He said, I haven't found evidence of improper motive. He did not, as contrary to what a lot of the media is reporting, he did not find there was no improper motive. He didn't find evidence of improper motive.
The evidence of absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence, right? But so Christopher Wray, the FBI director, similarly said yesterday in response to the report that the report did not find political bias or improper motivation. Again, do you challenge that?
No, I'm just saying what the IG found. The IG said I did not find documentary or testimonial evidence contradicting the reason, the explanations that were given me, and I accepted them. He is not definitively ruling that there was no bias. I think that's why we have Durham.
On the initial investigation, the FBI, again in the report, it says that the FBI saw that, you referred to that initial conversation between George Papadopoulos and Alexander Downer. It's just referred to in the report as, I love these acronyms, you get FFG, Friendly Foreign Government.
Friendly Foreign Government, FFG. We never heard of this Downer guy.
We also have CHS, I believe, right? Confidential Human Sources, and various others. But there was this conversation between Papadopoulos and the Australian, which, by the way, wasn't reported actually for about 2 months, I think, after the initial conversation. But the FBI regarded that as a tipping point, given what it had seen about the WikiLeaks publication, what it knew about the DNC hack already, and that is it not reasonable that they thought, given that they knew there was this extensive Russian effort to intervene in the election, along comes somebody inside the Trump campaign who says, you know what, we've got this information, possibly I've been offered information, possibly, or dirt on Hillary Clinton. Is that not reasonable then for the FBI to go ahead and say, you know what, we probably need to investigate this?
Well, that's why I sort of expounded on this a little bit in the front end. The basic official version is that we thought the Russians were hacking into the DNC, and on July 23rd, WikiLeaks dumped DNC emails. Then a foreign official comes in and says, back in May, this guy said something in a bar to me. It was a suggestion and a suggestion. And before they even interviewed that person, they opened a counterintelligence investigation on the whole campaign, on the idea that this must reflect pre-knowledge of the hack. I'm saying that when you actually look at the surrounding circumstances, that was a bridge too far. I mean, it wasn't reasonable for them to assume that, and the proper response was to talk to the campaign. That's normally what would happen. This happens all the time in campaigns. Foreign donors through straw donors, and there's hanky-panky going on. And usually we don't assume as the government that the campaign is part of that plot. We go in, we say to the campaign, hey, they're foreign people that are feeding money into your campaign and so forth. So the idea that you only talk to some American that is involved here if you are 100% certain that they're not culpable, is simply not true.
Just very quickly on this, because we do want to move on to other things, but on the Pfizer application in particular, again, the report is very critical. Documents 17 omissions or errors in either the initial or the 3 subsequent applications to the Pfizer court for surveillance of Carter Page, as we know. The report does say it resulted in Pfizer applications that made it appear that the information supporting probable cause was stronger than was actually the case. Do you think that, given that actually those Pfizer applications should never have been made?
Yeah, this is the meat of the issue, and if you actually spend time to look at what happened, I think you'd be appalled. Remember, they say, okay, we're not going to go and talk to the campaign. We're going to send people in, wire them up, and have them talk to the individuals. That happened. That happened in August, September, and October, and it all came back exculpatory. People say, I don't know, don't know what you're talking about. Not only exculpatory as to a relationship with the Russians, but as to the specific facts. And that, A, they never did anything about that. They just pressed ahead. But B, they never informed the court. They were told they didn't have probable cause to get a warrant, and so they took the Steele dossier, which they had done nothing to verify, and they used that to get the warrant, to just collapse everything. They withheld from the court all the exculpatory information, and they withheld from the court information about the lack of reliability of Steele. The real interesting thing here, and to me the major takeaway, actually is after the election. Because in January, they went to, Steele was dealing with one person. You only talk to one person. And that's what we call the primary subsource. And it was that person who had the so-called network of subsources. When they finally got around to talking to him, he said, I don't know what Steele's talking about. I didn't tell him this stuff. Or, it was mostly barroom talk and rumor. I made it clear to him this was my own suppositions and theories. And this is, and at that point, it was clear that the dossier was a sham. So what happens? What happens at that point? They don't tell the court, and they continue to get FISA warrants based on that dossier. And more damning is that they actually filed with the court a statement saying, we talked to the subsource, and we found him credible and cooperative. And they put that in to bolster
when the subsource had actually said.
What he was being truthful about is that the dossier was garbage.
There was nothing, yeah.
So it's hard to look at this stuff and
just very quickly,
not think that it was a gross abuse.
Let me put it another way. Do you think the judges, the 4 separate FISA judges in those courts, were badly misled?
Yes.
Just final question on this. The report also says this was a failure not only of the operational team in the FBI, but of the managers and supervisors, including senior officials in the chain of command. Are people going to be held accountable?
Well, they're all gone.
Do they need to be held? Is there some? I mean, you've mentioned obviously the other investigation that's going on.
I think that's.
Is that up to and including Jim Comey, Andrew McCabe?
I'm not going to speculate, who, but
do you think they're implicated in that statement?
I've said that I think that that group, there was a failure of leadership in some, and I'll just quote the IG. I mean, the IG says that the explanations he received were not satisfactory. Now, when you have the kind of rank behavior that involved, and the IG says he doesn't get an explanation for it, you can draw your own conclusions from that. But here I want to say that one of the things that's poisonous about our politics is the use of the criminal law process as a political weapon. And both sides, to some extent, are guilty of this, and instead of just debating ideas, they want to label their adversary as a criminal, and they, pore over the U.S. code to try to find some kind of esoteric argument as to why what someone does is a crime, and then get in a criminal investigation. And then they start calling for scalps. So, nowadays I'm constantly hit. Why aren't people going to prison for what they did to the president? And on the other side, throw Bill Barr in prison. And these things take time. At the end of the day, we're all protected by the fact, and this is something I'll get to if you want to talk about white-collar crime.
Yeah, I do.
Which is,
We've talked about nothing but white-collar crime so far, actually, but I think you're talking about a different sort.
What protects all of us is that the government has to have proof beyond a reasonable doubt, at least under Justice Department standards, before we indict anybody. And that's a pretty substantial hurdle. And no one is going to go to jail, and no one's going to be indicted unless that standard is met. And I know a lot of people, and also, you know, they think if I don't like someone and I don't like what they did and I'm morally outraged, send them to jail. And why isn't this person being indicted? And that's, you know, sort of poisoning the system.
Very quick question finally.